Let's now move on to the big story that WION will be tracking through the day. Today, the World Health Organization is going to conduct the World Health Assembly, and the group's decision-making body will bring together health officials from various governments to decide how the world should tackle the crisis posed by COVID-19. And this meeting will be held virtually, of course. But the story is not just the assembly itself. Rather, it is about how one country which has shown the world how to effectively deal with the lethal pandemic will not get to participate at all. Taiwan, an island of just 23 million people, less than 200 kilometers from China, has recorded 440 confirmed cases and just 7 deaths so far from this disease. The country has gone through a month without any new locally transmitted infections, and suffice to say that Taiwan has had an astounding success battling this pandemic. The country's success story was no fluke either. It was among the first in the world to close its borders, banning foreign visitors and any in-state mandatory quarantines for all Taiwanese flying back home. The Taiwanese government had a wealth of experience from the 2003 SARS outbreak. Its doctors and medical infrastructure is world-renowned, and the island nation also happens to be one of the mainstays in cutting-edge technology. So where is the point of contention? Why wouldn't the World Health Organization be obliged to learn from Taiwan? The answer is China and its draconian diplomatic overreach. For context, China claims that Taiwan is its own region, despite Taiwan having its own duly elected government and lawmakers seen by the Communist Party as democratically aligned. Taiwan has its own currency, in fact. But Beijing still calls Taiwan an inalienable part under its One China policy. Xi Jinping's government has lobbied hard to exert its influence over Taiwan, and other countries dependent on Chinese trades are forced to back this so-called One China policy. Now, due to this terse diplomatic equation, Taiwan's status as an independent nation remains in question. As of now, all but 16 countries recognize Taiwan and have active foreign relations with it. America, the United Kingdom, and even India don't feature in this list. This despite Taiwan going out of its way to counter Beijing's tilted mask and PPE diplomacy under the banner Taiwan Can Help. The island is donating 100,000 masks each week to the United States through FEMA. In fact, Jared Kushner, the President Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior White House advisor, was spotted wearing made-in-Taiwan masks, as was the U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien and White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Now, while that may be dismissed as healthcare diplomacy, what is the World Health Organization's take on this? The WHO has conveniently sidestepped and parroted its rulebook as of now, saying that Taiwan's membership is entirely up to member states. Does the Director General, Dr. Tedros, have the power to invite Taiwan? Well, the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, certainly thinks so. But the WHO's principal legal officer, that is Stephen Solomon, says that the Director Generals only extend invites when member states support doing so, thus further muddying Taiwan's chances. Now, just to remind our viewers that Taiwan has in the past attained observer status experience, and it has that for over 8 years. And the caveat here is that China only extended this courtesy by making Taiwan appear as Chinese Taipei. Beijing still holds this condition over Taiwan's head. But in its view, given its early handling of the outbreak and its efforts to suppress information, is only likely to be challenged. The matter will also be up for debate by WHO members on whether to resume allowing Taiwan to attend meetings as an observer. With the growing chorus of countries calling for a change to Taiwan's diplomatic status quo, the onus now is on India more than any other nation to set the record straight. India is slated to take over the chair of the World Health Organization Executive Board for a period of 3 years, and it has in the past largely honored Beijing's One China policy. Still, however, the country maintains good relations with Taiwan. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi too has spoken of strengthening and reforming the World Health Organization. That message for India's diplomatic corps is very much akin to its mission objective. Its actions thus must fit into that wider vision. And now for more details on this story, journalist and special correspondent for the LA Times and the Washington Post, Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick, joins us live from Taiwan. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. So tell us, this is one of the most anticipated global meets in recent times, with many countries discussing the future course of action in tackling this pandemic. What can we expect, especially when it comes to Taiwan's role?
Well, so far in the World Health Assembly, only around 22 countries have publicly stated their support for inviting Taiwan back to the Assembly. So we can expect to see a minimum of that number voting in favor of Taiwan. Some estimates suggest we could expect upwards of 60 countries in total that would be willing to support Taiwan's re-inclusion in the Assembly. So even though this is very unlikely to pass the threshold of nearly 100 votes that would be needed in order to invite Taiwan back, it will be what's expected to be a public relations coup for Taiwan, which has been winning friends and admirers around the world for so successfully handling the pandemic, as you previously said, seeing only 7 deaths in the country.
Right. Now, obviously the big story at this meet is the role of Taiwan, and if it will in fact get a seat at the big table. Many allies and countries are pushing for it. But China seems to resist. So what is the primary reasons for this?
Well, of course, China continues to claim Taiwan as part of its own territory, despite the Communist Party having never controlled Taiwan. And as you explained, Taiwan maintaining its own democratically elected government, military, currency, economy, and so forth. So it's very clear in this process, it's very important to be clear about what China's one China principle is, because China maintains a one China principle, which according to their definition means that China and Taiwan are both part of the same China. Other countries, such as the United States, do not have a one China principle, but a one China policy, which sees them only recognize one state that claims to represent China, but that leaves the status of Taiwan as a continuing question mark in international relations. And the UN officially, in spite of comments by Director General Tedros that has supported Beijing's one China principle, the United Nations actually takes no official stance on the status of Taiwan. So this could set the precedent for greater international inclusion for Taiwan and greater international recognition for the country.
Right. My final question. Now, Taiwan seems to have set a great example in tackling this pandemic or this outbreak effectively. The cases are lower than most of its neighbors. The death toll also remains at a lower number as of now. The world can essentially learn from Taiwan, how to tackle this pandemic. But it seems that it's very unclear who needs to invite Taiwan to the big table to participate and play a bigger role.
Yes, the World Health Assembly itself, the World Health Organization, has been sort of shirking responsibility in this regard and saying that it's up to individual member countries. But of course, Taiwan has been invited as an observer to the World Health Assembly many times in the past, notably from 2008 to 2016 under the China-friendly government of Ma Ying-jeou and his Kuomintang government in Taiwan. So clearly, there is precedent for Taiwan participating. But this has been dependent on pressure from China, which wants to punish Taiwan for having elected a relatively pro-independence government in 2016 under now President Tsai Ing-wen. So clearly this has been politicized and turned into a tool for punishing or rewarding the Taiwanese people, depending on whether or not they vote how Beijing wants them to vote.
Right, Ryan, thank you so much for your insights and thank you for joining us. We can only hope that Taiwan gets to play a bigger role at the assembly meet today.